assist to curb illegal wildlife trade. And then there's also an encouragement to engage civic leaders. Just last week, Mr. Bakwan led a team that conducted a special edition of an RG training in Chirundu, and they invited the DCs and the councillors. So that's something that we're also encouraging to sort of inculcate this need and raise the importance, awareness and the importance of curbing illegal wildlife trade, and also calling the people that are the decision makers, the people that can have an impact, have a voice that can have an impact in helping us resolve this. And so to close this off, I would just like to say, in the spirit of pursuing the truck, the canters that are used to transport illegal timber or charcoal, to borrow from Mr. Bako's guidance or food for thought, that a challenge that he has given to all of us is, are we really sure that some of these trucks that have sophisticated tracking devices on them, they are monitored throughout from the point of drop off to the point to another point of pickup until they get to the destination area? Are we sure that the owners do not know that these trucks divert to go to illegal timber logging stations and proceed to go to Zimbabwe or wherever it is that they head to, or through Nakonde border to deliver illegal timber? So this is something that we'll need to work with the investigators on, to see what more they can do to carry out further investigations. Of course, the phone forensics that are required, the law enforcement agencies that they need to interact with, and as we heard from the FIC, from the presenter from FIC, who talked about how FIC has access to a lot of information, to a lot of institutions that can provide them with the information that we need. So if we can work together to encourage that collaboration with the law enforcement agencies, and also just to encourage the investigators to bring us the right evidence that we need to seize, to successfully forfeit these trucks, then we can be able to sell them off and buy some land cruisers for the Department of National Parks or Forestry Department and put some money into Control 99. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chilambwe, for that elaborate presentation. Our second and last speaker is Mrs. Gracilia Chipulumlenga, who is the Deputy Chief State Advocate and head of the Taxation and Financial Crimes Department under the National Prosecution Authority. She is responsible for inter alia overseeing the prosecutions of economic and financial crimes, and she is a legal practitioner of over 15 years and in good standing. She started her career at the Drug Enforcement Commission, where she rose in ranks as head and became the head of the legal department from 2011 until 2016. And she has served in the criminal justice system for over 14 years. Having served in various positions at DEC, she has a wealth of experience in financial and economic crimes prosecution. She has been with the Taxation and Financial Crimes Department since 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mrs. Gracilia Chipulumlenga.
Thank you so much, Hastings. So my presentation will cover both the illegal timber trade and also the illicit wildlife trafficking. That is the overview of my presentation. Let's quickly go to the presentation. As many of us may be aware, Zambia has a very rich and valuable biodiversity species of flora and fauna. It comprises of more than 3,500 plant species, 2,032 invertebrates, 409 fish, 69 amphibians, 150 reptiles, 737 birds, and 224 mammals. It is listed in the Worldwide Fund Global 2000 ecoregion because of its high species richness. However, this biodiversity is under a lot of threat. This is because of the activities arising from illegal poaching, illegal logging, and also the illegal trade in timber and wildlife products. The illegal trade in wildlife and flora, especially in species like elephant, rhino, pangolin, hatskins, and rosewood, popularly known as mukula, become more complex, with a lot of syndicates using very complex smuggling techniques to avoid detection. Some of the techniques that have been known to be used by these criminals are techniques where they will use, for instance, pangolin skins. They'll get the scales. They'll get the scales and mix them with things like nuts, cashew nuts, because of the shape. The shape is similar to cashew nuts. So they'll get the cashew nuts and mix them with pangolin skin to avoid detection. We've also known them to use those are known as fillers. There's also instances where they will hide them in timber that is legally traded. So they'll get the timber, remove the inner part of the timber, and hide the illegal wildlife products in there. Communities living close to national parks and protected areas have been known to engage in poaching due to poverty. They've also been engaged in poaching due to human and wildlife conflict. We've also seen that illegal logging is rampant in those communities that are living close to these protected areas. This localized poaching is what feeds into the supply chains controlled by organized trafficking syndicates. So what are the barriers in fighting environmental crime? One of the barriers that we've seen when it comes to fighting these environmental crime is the failure by law enforcement agencies, by the prosecution authorities, to treat environmental crimes for what they are. We don't look at them as financial crime. These offenders that commit these offenses commit them for profit. They engage in these illegal activities for profit. Most of the time, we actually are interested in just arresting the poacher, taking him to court, having him convicted. Do we look beyond the poacher? Do we investigate beyond the poacher to see who's financing these illegal products? Do we investigate beyond the poacher to see who's benefiting, who's profiting from these illegal wildlife activities? Yes, you can take away the poacher. The poacher can easily be replaced because it's merely a pawn in this illegal business. We've also seen a lot of corruption within the enforcement circles, specifically with the issuance of licenses. We've seen corruption when it comes to customs. Sometimes these offenders or these people that participate in these illegal activities will pay custom officials to look the other way, such that even when their consignments are scanned through the scanners at the border, the custom authorities will not do anything. We've also seen a failure to utilize the spatial investigative skills by the investigators. Most of the cases that we receive when it comes to illegal wildlife trafficking are cases that, it's very difficult really to draw the line between a trafficking case or an entrapment case, because in most cases, we just see the officials posing as buyers, and then this accused person or suspect comes along, they are selling legal wildlife products, and they are captured. In some cases, we've even, unfortunately, I have had instances where officers would go out, ask around for somebody who's selling contraband, anything. Do you have a pangolin? And people are really forced to go out there and look for a pangolin because you've enticed them. You've told them there is market in these products. There's so much. You're going to earn so much. And in that case, people go out and look for a pangolin and bring you a pangolin. That is not, that is entrapment. That is something that the courts frown upon. And also, we've seen there's treatment of these environmental crimes as victimless crimes. In most cases, when we're dealing with a case like murder, we see a dead body. So we see a victim there. When it comes to animals, unfortunately, we don't give them the same priority that we give to these wildlife offenses. In most cases, it's actually disheartening when you go to court. When it comes to these wildlife offenses, you find that they are held last. In most cases, priority will be given to all other cases that are before a particular court. The wildlife cases will be called last. And in some cases, they are adjourned because the court does not have enough time to hear them, because they are being called at the very end of the proceedings. The other challenge we see is the failure to criminalize the illicit trade, trafficking, or possession of species that are not found in Zambia. We've had this challenge on a number of occasions. There are some instances where abalone has been seized right here in Zambia. But when you look at the provisions under our act, abalone is not one of the species that is prohibited, or dealings in abalone is not prescribed by the law. So what do you do with such offenders? In most cases, they've been allowed to go. So this is a challenge because our laws are not harmonized with the laws of other countries in the region. So I did cite one of the challenges being the failure for us to recognize wildlife offenses for what they are. In financial terms, environmental crime is rated to be the third largest crime sector in the world, following after the counterfeiting of products and drugs. And it is estimated to be worth, in 2018, it was estimated to be worth around 110 to 281 billion. This is as per WWF EU forestry crime recommendations. The United Nations Office on Drugs has also recognized and identified illegal wildlife trade as one of the most profitable transnational organized crimes. Unfortunately, our national response to this offense is something that I'm not proud of. We have failed to acknowledge wildlife offenses as financial offenses. Uh, I'll look at that case. This is a case involving, this happened in 2002, it's a long time ago, but I picked on this case because it's a case that involved a lot of, the elephants that were involved were a lot in this case. So there's a container that was offloaded in Singapore from a ship. In this container, they found that there were 6 wooden crates that were packed, in which were packed 532 elephant tusks. And in total, they were weighing 6.2 tons. This was equivalent to as many as 600 elephants that were poached. At the time, this was the largest seizure of ivory since the international ban was agreed in 1989. The investigations that were carried out by EIA revealed that this was not an isolated incident. They went back, looked at the records of this particular company, of these particular similar shipments that happened. And for a period of 10 years, they realized that there were more than 15 shipments that had happened coming from the same source, going to the same destination. And these were carried out by a well-organized ivory smuggling syndicate that had been operating since 1994. And this particular seizure, when they investigated, they actually found that this ivory, most of this ivory came from Zambia. So it was moved from Zambia through Malawi, then eventually it found itself in Singapore. There were some arrests that were made in Malawi, starting with the people that were responsible for the shipping. And unfortunately, there were no arrests that were made in Singapore. So the instigators of these offenses were never brought to book. They were left to enjoy their profits and they were not harmed in any way. Meanwhile, the people that were connected to those offenses in Malawi were arrested. So 600 elephants had been killed. And none of the people that benefited from this were taken to book. So maybe we quickly look at the approaches that we need to employ in combating environmental offenses. For us to prevent and address environmental crimes, we need to be proactive. We need to be deliberate about the fight against these environmental crimes. Like other financial organized crimes, we must address these offenses through a balanced approach that targets the complementary pillars of supply, demand, and livelihoods. The first thing that we should do is prevent. If we can, let us prevent these offenses from happening. We must engage in community outlook and awareness programs, education. We must also engage in providing alternative livelihoods for communities that are involved in illicit wildlife trade. And we must also address the vulnerabilities that are taken advantage of in our laws to help reduce the opportunities for trafficking. So this illegal trade in wildlife products and timber can easily be more targeted if each country were to consider prohibiting under its national laws the entry, exit, possession of wildlife products that are illegally obtained in or from anywhere else. Earlier on, I spoke about a case involving abalone, which we could not prosecute here in Zambia because abalone is not prohibited in Zambia. So we must look at the possibility of reconciling our laws regionally. Wildlife offenses or environmental crime offenses do not happen in isolation. Usually, corruption causes this illicit trade in timber and wildlife. And it occurs at all stages of illicit wildlife trafficking. It does manifest itself in numerous forms, ranging from officials receiving bribes, colluding with the criminals, using their authority of office, embezzling resources that are meant for the management of wildlife and protection. It's also important for us to build partnerships at a national and international level. Under the national level, currently we have the interagency framework where different law enforcement agencies, including the prosecution authorities and other stakeholders in the fight against crime and illicit financial flows have come together to form an agency, an intergovernmental agency where we fight crime. Under this interagency framework, we have a subcommittee that has been created specifically to look at illicit financial flows arising from wildlife offenses. The reason we have created this subcommittee is to ensure that parallel financial investigations are being conducted in illicit wildlife trafficking cases. There's a time that we had to prepare a presentation for ISAMLAC relating to money laundering in wildlife trafficking cases. Unfortunately, we couldn't find so many cases to report on the investigations that have been done in relation to money laundering in those offenses. So there was need for us to create this group. We had to actually revive some cases, some court cases that had been investigated by Department of National Parks and Wildlife, where convictions had already happened, where we saw potential for money laundering investigations or parallel financial investigations. And we gave them to the Anti-Money Laundering Investigations Unit to see whether we can conduct parallel financial investigations. We are also looking into cases that are currently active, where we see the potential for money laundering investigations. We give these cases to the Financial Intelligence Center, Anti-Money Laundering Investigations Unit, and Anti-Corruption Commission. Quickly, we need to also move beyond the seizures. We need to follow the money. The enforcement must go beyond seizures. And to achieve this, the money should be followed in every direction, not just towards the profits and assets. It's also important that we look at where the criminals spend this money to commit the offenses. They'll spend money on buying firearms. They'll spend money to buy ammunition. So we need to look at that, because this is the only way we can see who the financiers to these illicit activities, are. They also, when it comes to illicit trading, timber trading, they'll also be paying for harvesting equipment like chainsaws and also any form of transportation. Now, in 2016, when Zambia conducted its anti-money laundering CFT national risk assessment, we did not look at the wildlife component. We didn't extend this assessment of money laundering to the illicit trade in wildlife. We are currently undertaking another national risk assessment. And this time we've created a working group on illicit wildlife trade. And the reason we've done this is to understand the risks that are associated with to understand the money laundering risks that are associated with illicit wildlife trafficking. This will help us to put in place measures that are commensurate to the risks that have been identified. It's also important, as we tackle this illicit wildlife trade, to engage the prosecutors. It's important that the prosecutors should be the gatekeepers of the criminal justice system. In complex cases, prosecutors are encouraged to be involved to get involved from the very beginning of the investigations, to point the investigators to the evidence that you need to prove the offenses that you are likely to charge. It's also important that investigative officials correctly identify the points to prove at the outset of the investigation. So when you get involved from the very beginning, you'll be able to point them out to those points that they need to identify. It's also important as prosecutors to be aware of the multifaceted nature of illicit wildlife trafficking. There's an issue of corruption. There's issues of money laundering. There's so many issues. There's so many offenses that are committed by these criminals that are involved in illicit wildlife trafficking. We must also utilize the tools and avenues of confiscation and seizures. We must also encourage parallel financial investigations as we peruse the dockets, and we see that there's a potential in every docket. I mean, there's a potential for parallel financial investigations. Let's send back the dockets to the investigators with further instructions for them to conduct parallel financial investigations. And also, let's make use of the rapid reference guide that has been that has been done by WCP in conjunction with the Department of National Parks and Wildlife. It's also important, the previous presenters did talk about leading victim impact statements. It's also important to lead evidence of such. If you are able to, please do call the experts. Let them come and make these impact statements. What impact has this offense created? You know, what impact does it have on the environment, for instance? What impact does it have on the animals? We've had cases where the animals become so distressed. They've been trafficked, they become so distressed. You try to integrate them back into into their habitat. They fail to make it, they die. All those things should be brought to the attention of the courts. Yeah, this is the only way that the courts will stop, or ourselves will stop looking at these wildlife offenses as victimless offenses. We'll be able to hear from the experts that will show us, will be able to demonstrate to us the impact that these offenses have on the environment and the wildlife. So we have had just a number of public awareness programs. We have program against the illicit trafficking of pangolin. We also have programs, I'm finishing, I'm concluding. We have a public awareness program on Zambia Carnival Project. We also have a program that is dubbed With More Alive. As you go to the airports, you see all these animals and you see this title With More Alive. Basically, it's communicating to members of the public that these animals are worth more, much more when they're alive than when they're dead. So they educate travelers about the importance of wildlife, the importance of protecting wildlife, and the consequences of illicit wildlife trafficking. We also have a public awareness program, which is dubbed This Is Not a Game. Here, a poacher is preached to be a villain and not a hero. And this campaign utilizes a number of channels to raise awareness against illicit wildlife trafficking or illicit game trade. I'm concluding just one more. It's a 60 seconds video. Volume. Volume, please.
Zipitire kwa meno. Aone. Okay. Bushmeat. Buffalo. Eat. Eat or eat it. Muriyimbwa, muri wathoki, muri zebra. Ah, me buffalo chapi. Your son is dead. Doctor, he just had some bushmeat. Don't eat illegal bushmeat. Not again. Why? Illegal damage. Illegal.
So that is one of the campaigns that WCP and Department of National Parks and Wildlife and other stakeholders have come up with, which is dubbed This Is Not a Game. I'm sure some of you have seen a lot of posters about this particular campaign in the shopping complexes, shopping malls. I think we've seen all those posters. In conclusion, our response to environmental crime reveal the greatest mismatch of government and law enforcement resources spent on combating them, relatives to the profits that they generate. Illegal logging and the negative impacts of forest crime on climate change and extinction of species are still not adequately understood or addressed at all levels. So last year, at a conference like this one, we're discussing cases, we're discussing the lessons that we're learning from the cases of illicit wildlife trafficking. I remember very well one of the cases from there. What did we do with this lesson? This year, we are here looking at the case, the Singapore seizure. We're still learning lessons. What are we doing about those lessons that we are learning? Are we going to continue coming here, learning lessons, going back? We come next year and learn more lessons and do nothing with those lessons that we are learning? Let us take action. We are the ones that can change the narrative. So let us stop illicit wildlife trafficking and timber trafficking. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Mlenga, for that presentation. Probably in the interest of time, we can allow just one question. I see one hand, Mr. Nundwe. Right there.
My name's Mike, I'm the Senior Public Prosecutor, NPA, Lusaka. I'm very much happy with the presentation by the panelists. But there are issues which are still hanging, which need to be addressed. One, I can see with my little experience in the public service that there's little enforcement in these illegal activities, poaching, illegal mining, and also our partners, such as traditional leaders. I can see there's need also to have awareness with them because they play a bigger role in terms of all these types of crimes. They own land. They also the criminal activities are being done in their places or villages. Thirdly, the Singapore seizure. I remember this matter. It's a very old matter before NPA was established. Is there any information as to whether these seized elephant tracks were brought to Zambia?
Thank you very much, Mr. Ndo, for that question. Mrs. Mlenga.
Unfortunately, after that case was reported, there was very little information as to what happened to those tasks and also what happened or what could possibly have happened to the people that were involved in Singapore. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Mlenga. That marks the end of this session. A round of applause for our speakers as they walk off the podium. Thank you very much. Mr. Bako, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sichone and the panelists for that interactive and informative session. Though it paints a very bad picture, but the future is, there's light at the end of the tunnel. We'll get there with collaboration, especially after this our conference. As I indicated earlier, the next session, we will be looking at the implementation of the Children's Code Act, findings of the Child Justice Survey. And to comprise the panel, I will call Mr. Okay, ladies first. Sarah Larios. As she's coming, Larios is a lawyer who founded an organization called Undikumbukire Project in 2014 and started providing legal service to children in conflict with the law in partnership with LAB since 2015. And I also call Robert Makanta Siulapwa, RMS. He's a legal practitioner working with the same organization on the Kumbukire, which is in short Project Up Zambia. And he works there as a defense lawyer in the child justice system. So he defends the children in conflict with the law. So to the two presenters, immediately I'll allow you to proceed with the presentation in the order that they were called. Shall we welcome the two before they make the presentation?
Good afternoon. So I think we're all feeling that it's getting towards evening. We'll try to make this brief and interesting because we know we've all been sitting for a while. As you mentioned, my name is Sarah Larios, and I work with Undi Kumbukile Project, also known as Up Zambia. So that is less of a mouthful. So, Up Zambia is an organization that works primarily with children in conflict with the law, though we do get involved with other vulnerable populations that are also in conflict with the law. And so, as an organization, we focus on legal representation, social support, as well as advocacy to improve the justice systems in Zambia. So, we've been operating since 2014, and I know that we've probably come across many of you as we're in courtrooms together. But in addition to being in the courtrooms and in the correctional facilities, police stations, etc., we're also collaborating with NPA and other partners a lot on policy issues. And that's what led us into the work that we're going to be presenting today. So, as you all know, we recently in 2022 had a new change to our laws with the Children's Code Act coming into force. And so, this Children's Code Act deals with a lot of issues involving children, not just the criminal justice aspects. Before we had the Juveniles Act, but now this act has now come into place to cover that and other issues. And so today, we're mostly going to be focusing on the criminal justice aspects that involve children. And so the key principle behind this act is the best interest of the child. So, as I mentioned, this new act came into being at the end of 2022. And so now, a year on and almost 2 years on, we wanted as an organization to measure how the implementation is going of this act. I know that we're on the ground in the courtrooms, in the police stations, in the correctional facilities, and at times we weren't seeing, I think, on the ground what the act had hoped for and aspired for. So we thought rather than just forming opinions on this, and like many of us are often doing, speaking our views on the act, let's actually go out there into the community and understand what the knowledge levels are above the new act, as well as what the actual concerns were. What were the challenge? What were the successes under the new act? And so we were able to cooperate with the ENACT program, which I'm sure many of you are aware of, with the support from the European Union and from Germany, and carry out a survey of 5 different provinces in which we went district by district. Those provinces included Central Province, Copperbelt, Lusaka, Luapula, and Southern Province. And so we actually did this data collection district by district in the period of time November 2023 to December 2023. And so the responses that we're going to be giving you today is reflective of that period. And I'm sure that in 2024, many more strides have been taken, but this is reflecting what was going on in the justice system as of 1 year out from the implementation of the act. And this survey was done with 2 different approaches. We did key informant surveys, and which means that we went and spoke to members of the Zambia Police Service, NPA, the Correctional Service, Legal Aid Board, social welfare, and civil society organizations. And we also spoke to children who were in the criminal justice system within those same districts. So, all in all, we had 484 participants responding, and half of those were children. And so, as you see here, we had 247 child participants. Our largest group after the children was Zambia Police, where we went station by station, post by post. And in terms of this group, for National Prosecutions Authority, we were able to interview 40 members of staff. And some of you might have been among those that actually participated in the survey, and for that, we're very grateful. And so one of the first things we were looking at was awareness levels. Of course, one of the most basic considerations you need to have is, are people aware of the new law before you even start getting to issues of implementation? So on awareness levels, we saw that amongst government stakeholders, there was really high levels of awareness. And basically, NPA scored 100%. Every person that we spoke with from NPA, from the 40, all were very, very well aware of the act. I think where we found some concerning statistics is with children. Of the children that we interviewed, almost all of them had never heard of the act and didn't know the protections that were there, that were supposed to be benefiting them. So out of the 247 children, 202 were not aware of the act. So I think that goes to show there's unequal awareness amongst the public and the government. So one of the issues that we did the survey on, of many, was that around detention, and how is what the law contemplates in terms of detention reflected in the real world? What's really happening, what things have worked, and what things are still challenges? So one of the things that is in the new act is about apprehension. So when police are apprehending children under the new act, they shouldn't be carrying firearms or being in uniform when apprehending a child. Of course, the children aren't supposed to be detained by police for more than 48 hours before being released on bond or appearing in court. They should not be detained in the same cells as an adult, and they're not supposed to be questioned without their parent or guardian or a social welfare inspector present. So when we actually started speaking to children and the police gave a response that said, 60% were saying children are not detained beyond 48 hours. But then if you look at the children we actually spoke to, out of the 200 plus children, 60% of them reported that they had been detained, or actually at that moment had already reached beyond 48 hours. So we see there's a gap now on following the act. Okay, next. And so we didn't just stop to say, have you been there for over 48 hours? But these are the children, this is reflective of the children we spoke to. So you can see only 2% had been there detained for less than 48 hours. The biggest percentage we had is 10% of children responded that they had been in detention with the police for more than a month. And then we even had those that had been in police detention for 4 to 8 months without going to court. Then we also spoke to the police about their ability to keep children in separate cells from adults during that period of time that they were in detention. 66% of police reported that in their station, children were kept separate from adults. But when we actually interacted with the children, 81% of children said that while they were at the police, they had been kept in the same cell. as adults. So we see that there's a disconnect there on what children are experiencing and what the law is contemplating and what law enforcement hopes that the situation is. When it comes to detention and correctional facilities, the Act does set forth some standards on that as well, saying children are not to be remanded into adult prisons or correctional facilities. They're not supposed to be remanded for more than 90 days, and custodial orders are prohibited as sentences and basically orders for children under 16 and only should be used as a measure of last resort for children 16 and above. One other change was that the reformatory orders and approved school orders no longer, if they're given by the magistrate's court, have to be confirmed by the high court. And then also these orders, because they're not being sent for confirmation, now the magistrate is supposed to set a time frame for the duration of the order, as well as direct the child what period of time they need to be transported to the facility. We did speak to corrections about the length of time children are spending in their facilities. And of course, we do know that corrections does not have the ability to release people within certain periods of time when the act, the period in the act is run through. But as you can see, we had 33% of the children that they kept in custody, they acknowledged they had been there beyond remanded more than the 3 months, which is uh, which is the limit of the law. So they were aware that children were being over detained, even if that wasn't something that they had control over. And then when we spoke to children about that were in the correctional centers about how long they themselves had been detained in that facility, we had 10% that said they had been in the facility less than a month, 16% that said they had been there for 1 to 3 months, 47% said that they had been remanded for more than 3 months, which is the statutory limit there. 22% had been there more than a year, and we actually had 4% that had been there from 2 to 6 years. We actually did find someone who had been detained for 6 years in the prison without their case concluding. And so, when it comes to experiences of children in the justice system, of course, the act is setting out that the justice system is supposed to function in the best interest of the child. And there's actually a specific section that says children should not be subjected to torture, cruel treatment or punishment, unlawful arrest or deprivation of liberty, capital punishment, or life imprisonment. When we actually spoke to children who are in the justice system and asked them, had they experienced torture during their time in custody, 57% said that they had firsthand, personally experienced torture. At least 40% had not had that experience, then 3 weren't open enough to respond. 3%. And now the Act also speaks specifically to children in custody, giving them specific rights. And one of that is right to access food and right to access medical attention. 84% said at least when they were in police custody, they did not have access to food while they were in police detention. And then 56% said that they didn't receive medical attention even when they had a medical need. But at least 44% were able to access medical attention while in custody. So at that, I'm going to hand over to my colleague to take us through the rest of the survey results.
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My presentation will focus more on the results with regards to diversion and court proceedings. On diversion, as most of you know, diversion is a mechanism that has been introduced by the Children's Code Act for purposes of derailing children that come in conflict with the law from their formal court process. Ideally, this is done because by nature, children are very inexperienced and the court process is quite intimidating. Based on our survey, we discovered that stakeholders gave different responses on what they think of diversion. For example, if you look at the children who are mostly getting in conflict with the law, they had no idea that diversion exists. Majority of them said that they don't know that most matters can be diverted. And then when it came to various stakeholders, about 60% says they've used diversion. Then 22% never used diversion. And then we had some on the fence, were about 10%. Stakeholders like social welfare have embraced the notion of diversion, and according to what they told us is 85% of them have been participating in carrying out diversion. When it comes to the hosts themselves, NPA, they've carried out cases where they've reviewed certain matters that could be diverted, and the markup or the percentage was 73%. The police, on the other hand, despite being at the commencement of most proceedings, have had a different route towards diversion. They find it to be a good experience, but the only problem they also have is that they have a hard time explaining to most complainants that every matter or any matter can actually be diverted. So, in a nutshell, most of the stakeholders believe that diversion is a good thing, but majority of them also say that not every case should be diverted. This also is in line with NPA's notion of diversion, because they believe that some cases are too severe or too recurring for them to be diverted, and therefore some matters should not be diverted. In court proceedings, we focused more on Section 78 of the Children's Code Act. This stipulates the manner in which evidence should be received whenever I've got a child witness before court. According to most people from NPA, 17 of the participants did say that they are aware of how they can receive evidence from a child witness in court. However, the biggest issue that most prosecutors have or the state have is there is very few infrastructure, as well as we have problems with children struggling with composing themselves in the normal court setup. Another thing we must make note of from our findings in the survey is that enough of the children that faced normal court proceedings away from diversion had a hard time struggling with either composing themselves as well as telling the court exactly what happened. And because of this, NPA therefore say that the diversion process in itself is not a very good means of first resort when dealing with children in conflict with the law. We also had some impressions from the children that we interviewed regarding the survey. We had mixed responses. Some said it was a good law. If I caught one or two, they said, especially with regards to diversion, the complainant asked to withdraw the matter, but I don't know why they keep adjourning it and keeping me here at the courts. Another one would say, I heard that from those going to Katombora, that a juvenile should not refuse his offense. Is this true? So we have instances where children are detained despite being given custodial orders, and they are being kept at remand for long periods of time. And now these children now begin to discuss what they know about the act. Should they quickly admit and go home, or should they go through the entire court process, and then face the judgment, then get Katumbora, and then go and face their time in a reformatory order. We also had other positive and negative feedback from various stakeholders. Go to the next one. Most people, especially the police and NPA, felt as if the law itself, despite being progressive, is a bit too bulky and is very difficult to implement. A good example is Section 78 of the Children's Code Act, which talks about having a child testify from a different courtroom, from a different room, away from the courtroom, and through video link. Especially at the subcourt, most of us will agree that it's very difficult for us to implement that because we don't have the infrastructure and the equipment to do it. I know, of course, recently Mrs. Chizongo has informed me that equipment has been bought for the subcourt, so hopefully this will change. In conclusion, we shall focus on what we think can be done to better implement the provisions of the newly enacted Children's Code Act. I think one of the most aggressive recommendations would be that we embrace diversion. The reason being is diversion not only does it embrace the best interest of a child, but also the child has enough time to be reformed, which is in line with the spirit of the Children's Code Act, focused on a restorative justice system. If we deviate from diversion, we find ourselves wasting time going through the robust court process. And this only wastes our resources, but also adversely affects a child's maturity. Further, in conclusion, I think other than NPA, we as CSOs as well as the police should come in collaboration to ensure that the various provisions of the Children's Code Act are better implemented. That is all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Up Zambia, for that presentation. Very insightful, interesting findings. Indeed, we can only but take interest in the findings and make sure that the right thing is done. I'm happy that out of the 40 NPS elected employees, all of them showed knowledge of the court. Very important and interesting. And at least, yes, a round of applause, please. Because a lot of training has gone into this, and at least 73% have come across diversion, or at least know what diversion is and are willing to implement it. But our goal is to have 100% knowledge and implementation of the progressive provisions that this act, the code has. Thank you very much, Sarah and Robert, for the presentation. Please, let's clap for them. In the interest of time, they are still around. We can interact with them. We'll not have a Q&A session in the interest of time, but they are around and they'll be making further presentation, I think, tomorrow. So we better make use of them and engage more on this aspect. Thank you. We go to the next session, and this session has to do with ourselves, mental health. And to lead us through this session, we'll have Dr. Naim Dalal, who is a psychiatrist and is based here in Lusaka. Is our doc here? Ah, voila, here you are. Thank you very much. You see, before you diagnose me with anything, doc, just come so that you come and speak to us.
Yeah, I think I'll need that, yeah. All right. Very good afternoon stroke evening to you all. All right. Are the slides up? All right. So my presentation is going to take you through not about things that have to do with what you were just discussing, which is your trade, but my presentation is going to talk about you as individuals because you're dealing with a lot of, for lack of a better term, issues. Not just issues in your profession, but issues in your personal lives as well. So my role here is to really help you check in with yourselves. As you wind down for the day, what is it that you're doing to make sure that it is making sense? The things that you're doing are making sense in your professional life and your personal lives. So we're going to have a check-in session for these 30 minutes. I've been given 30 minutes, so I'll make sure I keep those 30 minutes. And we're going to tune in with your mental health. So to start with, when I say mental health, many of you often think I'm talking about your mental health institutions, but that's not true. I'm talking about your day-to-day well-being and how is it that you're focusing. Right now, as a region, we are in a drought, but in particular in Zambia, we're in a power crisis, which is also leading to a water crisis and so on and so forth. So, if you want to understand your mental well being and mental health, you need to start with your own self. Do you know who you are? If I ask you, as individuals, who are you? All right? Who are you as an individual? What are you going to tell me? Are you going to tell me about your professional life to say you are a member of the National Prosecutor Authority? You are um, a lawyer, an accountant. Who are you? What is your trade? Is that what you're going to tell me? Or are you going to tell me that you are a guardian, a parent? Or are you going to tell me that you are a caretaker? Or are you going to tell me that you're a religious person? Who are you? Because what I've shared right now is all of the things that you are. But for you to figure your mental health and your mental well being, you first need to know who you are as an individual. And that is how you're going to align yourself to everything else around you, including your work that you're doing right now, trying to pay attention past 17 hours, almost going to 18 hours right now. So you are going to actualize a lot of things right now. You're going to go in your minds and you're going to relate to certain things. But after this talk, when you walk out, when you're going to share or exchange thoughts or concepts that I will be sharing right now, it will not be the same because your experiences are very different. Despite growing up in the same communities, your experiences have been very, very different. So you're going to externalize based on your own experiences, and you're going to know what stresses you, what your triggers are, and whether or not you have boundaries, which I would actually bet that none of you have because it's past almost 18 hours and you're still sitting here. So the first question that I have for all of you is, can you achieve a work-life balance? And whenever I ask a question, feel free to jot it down. These are questions you have to ask and reflect within yourselves from time to time. It's very important for you to do that. So if you have your phones, open your notepads and just write down, can I achieve work-life balance? Because this is fluid. It's not something that is always going to be there. And for you to answer this question, you need to break it down. It is not just going online and reading a text or blog or an article or a scientific article and saying work-life balance equals this. No, you really need to internalize it and figure it out as an individual. So let's break it out for you as individuals. The first thing is work. What does work mean to you? But what impact does your work have on your well-being? It's almost 18 hours you're sitting in a conference room. It's part of your work. So what impact does it have on your well-being? Ask yourself. All right, you're dealing with so many cases, your workload is overwhelming. How is that affecting your well-being as individuals? Then let's talk about your personal life. What impact does your personal life have on your well-being? Right now in Zambia, speaking of the context of Zambia, we are experiencing power crisis. In our personal lives, we have a lot of challenges that are happening. What impact does that have on your workspace? Okay, if you receive some bad news or unfortunate news in your personal lives and you're dealing with a case at work, are you able to focus at work? So these are questions that you need to reflect on a frequent basis, not just that something that is going to be permanent. What impact does your personal life have on your work now? Earlier, it was about your well-being, now about your work. Okay? Um, we are just in Zambia, we're just coming from our school break terms just ended. For those that are parents, children were home. So you had to spend more time at home to give some time to the children. Okay, so you were not giving that much time to your work. So there's that interplay between your personal life and your professional life as well. And then, of course, there's the question, what impact does your work have on your personal life? Now, this is a big one because I'm going to break this down further. Now, for you to break all these questions, all of these are going to be different in different seasons of your life. So your mental well-being is not the same every time. Okay? You need to understand again, when I say well-being, many of you think, and as this is more of a, not even just a Zambian thing, it's an African thing or universal thing, where we often say health is physical. If I break my bones, I'm not well. If I'm admitted to the hospital for a physical ailment, I'm not well. But well-being has to do with all these things that have been highlighted here. Physical, we know very well because that's indoctrinated in us as Africans, as Zambians. But let's talk about emotional. Do we talk about feeling the irritability that we are feeling right now? When you go behind, you're going to look at the power sockets. In fact, just here, you're going to see so many things that are on charge. Okay, because of the power crisis that we have. Because of that, you are emotional. You are irritable. You are more irritable than usual. You get home, you find that there's no water and people are not rationing water. You'll have an outburst. You'll be angry. That's normal. But do you communicate about that to say, I'm angry because of A, B, and C? We don't do that. Financial. Because of these issues we're facing socioeconomically, the financial terrain also changes. Things are more expensive. That affects our well-being as well. Social. You're not as interactive as you are. At home, it's like a pressure cooker where everyone is irritable and you can't even have a social space together. You're at each other's, back and forth. Occupational, this is your workspace. This is where you want to constantly climb and feel a sense of self. This is also part of your well-being. Spiritual, as Zambians and also just generally in the region, Wantua Mulungu, we are people that are spiritual. We believe in the higher power. And right now, when you're irritable, that often is something that you start questioning. Intellectual, your ability to problem solve. And I don't mean problem solving big, larger than life issues, climate change, solving that problem. No, I mean your everyday problems. There's no water, there's no power. We don't know when power is going to come. We need to have food on the problem, solve that in a calm way. Okay? Environmental, what's happening around us in the environment, trees and all the drought, is also got an effect on our well-being. Because let's go back to the basics. What do we breathe in? Oxygen. We breathe out carbon dioxide. The environment feeds us oxygen. If the environment is affected, our overall well-being is affected. The key gas that helps our brain function well is oxygen. Okay? So when you look at well-being, I'm not just talking about your physical health. I'm talking about all of these things. Where are you? If you were to grade it from 1 to 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, the best, the optimum, with 1 being the least, in all of these domains in your life, where are you? These are questions you need to check in with yourselves as you are dealing with all the issues you are dealing in your workspaces. So coming to the question, can you achieve a work-life balance? This is where we talk about the key ingredient being you. If you want to achieve work-life balance, you have to look within yourself as an individual. The answer there is it depends where you are in your life right now because seasons change. You are many things. There's the family side of you. Okay, if you're a parent, a guardian, there's that side of you. If you're a spouse, a partner, there's that side of you. Then there's friends, friends that are in your workspaces, friends that are outside your workspaces. Then there's your work colleagues who you don't consider to be your friends. Okay, and these are individuals you share spaces with and you have a different identity on towards them. Then there's others. Now we have the Internet of Things. We have an identity online as well. Okay? And then there's you that holds all of these different pieces together. So just to give you a context, I am Dr. Dalal. I'm a psychiatrist. I'm a clinician that works at Chainama Hospital, which is a tertiary mental health institute, but also at UTH, which is a tertiary clinic. I'm also doubling as a national mental health coordinator for the Zambia National Public Health Institute. So 3 days in a week, I'm at national level working with policies, advocacies, and creating health system strengthening. I'm also a consultant for various organizations. I'm also a lecturer. I'm also a researcher. In my religious space, I'm also a leader. I'm a son. I am an uncle. I have dependents. I have all these identities. So who's holding all these things together? It is me as an individual. So these are things that you need to align yourself in knowing who is it that's holding all the will. It is you as an individual. And you need to take care of that person. You need to take care of that person. It's as honest as that. If you want to achieve work-life balance, take care of you before you start taking care of your family. If I give you 500 kwacha right now and say, go buy yourself something you like, a biscuit maybe, you're going to go into ShopRite and you're going to start thinking, oh, my partner likes this biscuit, this flavor, my son, my nephew, they like lemon, so whatever is left over, I'll get it. You won't think of you. True or false? You're always going to think of all the other things that hold you together but yourself. And it's not called being selfish, it's called being self caring. Okay, feel yourself so that you're able to give out there. And that is the whole concept of work life balance. You need to know you because you are many things. All right, but it all is put together as you. And if you notice here, there's that toxic point there, and in your mind, because you think of everyone and everything around you, you become the toxic person because you're always giving. Okay, now as prosecutors, I did a bit of research finding out that if you're going to live to 100 years, 33.3% of those years are going to be spent in your workspace. That is for those that do the actual time in, time out. But with work-life balance being off, you even spend up to more than 45 years at work. Okay, but when I asked in that study and did a piece of survey, I wanted to find out how much time do you spend with family. We don't know. Many of you think, and I'm going to call out with with the permission of the secretariat, if you allow me, I'm going to call you out as bad manners because all of you think family time is when you spend time carrying out responsibilities towards your family, buying certain things. For instance, school started, so buying school supplies, taking your children with you, that is not family time. Those are your responsibilities as parents, as guardians towards the children. Family time is when you're sitting or when you're taking time to understand one another and checking in with one another. That is family time. And we don't know how much time you spend with your families. When we talk about other things that you take care and that holds you together, your hobbies, what you're passionate about, we also don't know because you don't really want to own up to that. So, but when you look at it all, at the end of it all, 100 years, 95 years of that time, you're going to spend in your own head, thinking about yourselves and your story. So you need to do justice and be kind to you and, self-care in a sense that you are taking care of you. So many times in this anthem of, let's check in with ourselves, we think that what makes us happy is money and a career. Those are ingredients that make us happy. Yes, it's true. But it's all of the above. There's money, there's your career, there's your physical health, there's your hobbies that make you feel good about you, there's rest. Rest is very, very important. And then there's your career. And when I say rest, I don't mean going and having, and I'm going to use a term that may upset a few of you, measly hours of your sleep. Okay, you tell me to say, no, doc, I take in at least 6 to 7 hours of sleep. But when you wake up, you're tired. That is not sleep. That is not resting. You're always on fight or flight in your mind. So that is something that you need to figure out as well. Which brings me to this question now. Do you take care of yourself? It's a big question. Do you take care of yourself? You know, when we ask this question, oftentimes, and according to statistics, it shows that many people say, yes, why am I even being asked this question? Of course, I take care of myself. Look at me. I have an amazing career. I'm doing fine. I have a family. I'm doing okay. I'm afloat. But when I ask you further to say, how do you take care of yourself? This is where you get stuck. You get stuck because you're not taking care of yourself. You're taking care of everything around you but yourself. Okay? So that's one thing that you need to be self aware of. So this is where when you don't take care of yourself, you become stressed and you become hooked. So many of you are hooked by life right now. Okay? Stress is anything that overwhelms you. Being stuck in traffic, becoming irritable, you're overwhelmed, you're stressed. Okay? Not having your cup of tea the way you like it and you become irritable, that is you being stressed. Okay? Not being able to afford something that you want to have as an individual, but you have other responsibilities, that is stress. Okay, and in the interest of time, I'm going to quickly push past this slide to just help you understand that whenever you're overwhelmed, you are hooked. What that means is right now you're all in this amazing hall. Yes, it's past 18 hours. Yes, we want to go home, but you're not going to remember what the color of the carpet was. All you're going to remember is, yeah, there was that Dr. Dalal who came to talk about mental health. You're not going to remember how beautifully the tiles and the ceiling were put, how the lights were aligned. You're not present in this room right now. You're all in your minds and you're not focusing where you are. That is what being hooked means. How many of you drive from home to work and you don't even know the, the various things that are happening along the route? Okay, I'm one person who lives in Makeni, all right, and Lilai really, and then coming this side, I've been coming to this part of town my whole life. There are times when a whole structure comes up and you don't even know that structure came up. You're just like, oh, that's where that is. I didn't know. You're just driving, you're just going through life. It means you're hooked in your life, in your reality. You're not living through your reality. And that's very important for you to understand. So, oftentimes, when we're hooked, we're not just hooked, we are hooked such that we are in our thoughts and they are difficult or unhelpful thoughts and feelings. And when you are like that, it's the simple saying in primary school 1 plus 1 equals 2, 2 plus 2 equals 4. Stress adds up. It keeps adding up such that it takes away from your well being. And it leads to chronic stress. Okay? So, as I conclude, I need to help you understand that, colleagues, you're all, living through a life, but you're making it hard because you're not engaging through your life. You're really in your mind all the time. And these thoughts that you're constantly going through, when you're not communicating them through and you're not taking care of yourself or checking in with yourself to say, am I taking care of myself? It's really overwhelming you. And it's taking you away from your values. Okay? And when I say values, I simply mean at work, I am a hardworking person. But at home, I'm not hardworking. At home, I'm caring. These are my values. But when I'm stressed, I'm not hardworking at work, or I'm not caring at home. And the stress pulls me away from my hardworkingness or my caringness. So you need to know who you are. Every time you are hooked, you are pulled away. And this is what people tend to see in you. But that's not who you are. Okay? So how do you get pulled away? You get pulled away by getting into fights and arguments with people that care for you and that you care for. Your children, your family, your friends that know you, you're going to start getting into arguments with them because they know you. And they're going to call you out to say, is everything okay? And because you're irritable, you'll say, why are you asking me this question? And that's how you become the toxic one. Okay? Or you get pulled away by avoiding certain things in life. You procrastinate. You go on social media, you've read a story, okay, on whatever Zasco has to say today. Then you go on WhatsApp, you read the same story. Then you go on another platform, you read the same story. You read the comments, you'll come back. Those are all away moves. Okay. Another big one, and I have to say this because I do see many of your professionals in my practice, substance use, alcohol. We've normalized it. That's an away move. That is not a healthy coping habit. That is an unhealthy coping habit. We've normalized social drinking to be something that we've all accepted, to say it's okay. Or for many of us, over the counter drugs, we'll just go and say, I need some Piriton. I need Panadol. Those are bad manners. Those are away moves. And you end up in what we call an emotional storm. And you know why it's called an emotional storm? It's because the people that care for you and that you care for are in that same storm with you. Like right now, you get home, things are not according to how you expected them to be. Maybe it's a child in question or a partner or someone. You're going to shout at them. You're not going to communicate at them. That is an emotional storm. You need to learn these things. You need to acknowledge them within yourself to say, today I'm irritable and I'm going to lash out. Are we all following? This is the check-in that I need all of you to acknowledge, because colleagues, you're living a very stressful work lifestyle, which is affecting your personal life and your personal life by your friends as well. Um, so this is where you need to understand the profession that you've chosen is stressful by nature. It's a high pressure environment. Okay, just know that as prosecutors, you are in a high pressure environment. But that's the thing. You are the ships in this metaphor. A ship is always safe at the shore, but that's not what it's built for. Your profession is that what it expects you to be. But that doesn't mean that you don't service yourself. You constantly have to check in with yourselves. And it's not always obvious. You need to know your bodies. Okay, please know your bodies. I'll share this. I know myself whenever I am unwell, stressing, psychologically, I have migraines. That's how my body tells me to say, Naeem, you're not fine. Even if I take painkillers, that migraine won't go away until I figure out to say, you are stressed, it's work related, it's personal life. Can you deal with it? Even if I haven't dealt with it, but I've acknowledged it, that migraine goes away. You all have triggers in your physical health. Either it's recurrent flus, where you know, we all have those friends, they have a flu, they've recovered 2 weeks later, again, there's a flu. It's their body, the immune system is, whenever we are stressed, our immunity goes down. Or it could be a chest pain or back pain. Or those of you that sleep but wake up tired. That's your body telling you that you are not okay. Stress is a real thing. And stress doesn't just happen mentally. And this is where we get it wrong. Stress manifests in all these ways. These slides will be shared with all of you. Please introspect and figure out where you are. Physiologically, how does your body react when you're stressed? Okay? Cognitive, thought processes. You know those things where the pen is right here, but you are frantically looking for it everywhere. But it's right in front of you. That is your cognitive stress. You're unable to just focus. You're temporarily confused. Or you're reading the same case over and over again and it's not making sense. Okay? Behaviors, you have avoidance. Emotional, you go to your emotions such as irritability, anger, sadness, feeling meh. Or spiritual, you start questioning God, which is very normal when you're stressed. So know how stress manifests in you and acknowledge that within yourself. Tell yourself and communicate it to the people that know you so that it's easier. So I'll end with this exercise just to help you understand as we conclude this. Many of you like to throw around the term burnout. I think I'm burnt out. I need a break. I think I'm burnt out. I need a break. You're not burnt out. You need to understand that burnout is a stage and it's a journey that happens over a period of time. And it is something that comes because of your work environment and your personal environment. Okay? So here, there's a journey. Can you raise your hands if you work longer hours? It's okay, it's a safe space. I won't admit you. Raise your hands if you work longer hours. We're checking in right now. Okay? Put your hands down. Raise your hands if you don't delegate. You know you can delegate a task, but you don't want to. You just say, no, it's me. I'm going to raise my hand here. You don't delegate. Raise your hand if you don't take breaks. Basic breaks. Okay? Raise your hands if you don't say no. You know your plate is full. but you just don't say no. Okay? Raise your hands if you bottle up how you feel about certain issues. You bottle up, you don't express yourself to say. Raise your hands if you procrastinate and avoid certain things. You know the deadline is last minute, like this presentation was due last Sunday, but I only gave it right now. Okay? Raise your hand if you want to be a perfectionist all the time. It has the T's need to be crossed, the I's need to be dotted. Raise your hands if you take work home. Raise your hands if you take on social justice issues. Now, this one is a very key one for you because it is part and parcel of your profession, but you know there are boundaries, right? There are certain things that you need to know that is beyond your profession, but you still do it. Or they don't have transport money. It's okay. Here's a 50 kwacha. That is taking on things that are beyond you. All right? Raise your hands if you don't talk about it. The pressure that you feel, you don't talk about it. No, work is hard. Do I know what you do for work? Talk to me. I want to know. And raise your hand if you squeezed out your hobbies, things you enjoy doing. Maybe you're a prayer person. Maybe you like reading. Maybe you like going window shopping. But you've squeezed them out completely. So, colleagues, if you've scored 3 out of these, then you're on your road to burnout. If you've scored 5 out of these, then you are burnt out. And if you've scored all of these, please see me and pay me handsomely. All right, and pay me handsomely so that I can help you best. Okay, so I will conclude this as you check in with your mental well being. Colleagues, problems are part of life. Facing them is an art of life. So please, it starts with you. Please be aware of who you are. Talk to yourself, understand who you are, and communicate where you are in your different domains of your life. With that said, it's truly been an honor and thank you for your attention.
You message for any questions.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much, Doc, for that wonderful presentation. Now that the doctor has confirmed by his general diagnosis that we are all his potential patients, any questions before he charges? Because after this, he'll start charging. Any questions? Even when you want to rush home, he's already mentioned that there will be a lot of issues there. There's no power. So you better ask questions here. All right. Okay. It seems everything is very clear. Or, Doc, your message is such that people are introspecting. We are now doing our self-introspection as where we stand and whether we are stressed or not, and how we can come out of that situation. Thank you for this beautiful information. We'll make use of it, and we'll visit you when we see that the situation is needing your attention. After we go through the slides, especially where we score ourselves there properly. I noted that most of us scored indication that we are supposed to see you sooner than later. So thank you very much. Another applause for the doctor. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where the journey ends for today. We will resume tomorrow at exactly 08 hours for the last session of the conference. So at this point, unless there's anything else that needs to be mentioned, we have come to the end of our session of the day. We are free to go. Thank you very much. But before you leave, there will be snacks outside. So please, we should not see them hanging around. Use them.